many fish can you have in a saltwater tank? Lots. But do you mean how many fish total in one tank? Or do you mean how many different types of saltwater fish can live in the same tank together? Or perhaps how many different saltwater fish species are there to choose from that are able to be kept in a home aquarium successfully? Or most importantly, how do I pick a great community of attractive and fun saltwater fish for my tank? Let's get those answers. First, there are hundreds of saltwater fish species that do well in our home aquariums, from small nanofish like gobies, blennies, damsels, cardinals, and small wrasses, to tangs, angels, dottybacks, basslets, anthias, and the list goes on. And there are many more types of fish than that, and many species within each type, making for an incredibly long list of fantastic options. So you will most certainly find a whole bunch of fish that tickle your fancy. Many of those fish are able to live in a community of different species, while some others might be somewhat or even very aggressive towards their tank mates. But again, there are so many different fish to choose from, you can have a tank with a very diverse community of saltwater fish, even when you avoid those less friendly tank mates. And I'll point you in the right direction for selecting a good community of different fish for your tank in just a little bit. Now, when it comes to how many saltwater fish you can keep in your tank, that depends on a few factors. First, and most importantly, the size of your aquarium is going to play the biggest role in the number of saltwater fish you can comfortably keep in it. And not just the total number of fish you can have at once, but also the number of different species it's appropriate for. For example, while you can fit quite a few nanofish in a 40-gallon cube tank, you wouldn't be able to keep even one adult blue tang because the tank just doesn't give that larger and very active swimmer enough space. It's also best to look at not just the volume of the aquarium, but also the dimensions. A 40-gallon cube or a 40-gallon tall aquarium offer less usable space than a 40-gallon breeder that is shorter but longer side to side and wider front to back. In other words, larger tanks that are longer and wider have a larger pool of fish to choose from, and at the same time, the larger the tank is, the more fish you can comfortably fit. How many fish you can fit in that 40-gallon breeder example tank can range quite a bit depending on the adult size of the fish as well as the type of habitat that they prefer. Some fish are very small and they really don't add much waste to the system, while larger fish tend to eat more and make more waste. Some fish prefer to hang out in open water in the middle of the tank, while others prefer to live closely amongst the rocks. Some prefer to perch on the corals and others stay on the sandbed. If you find fish to fill each of these separate habitats in your tank, you'll be able to keep more fish since they won't be competing for space. And because your tank is only so big, if you prefer to keep larger species, you'll keep fewer fish in total than if you kept some larger species and some smaller species, and even more if you kept only smaller species. Some fish can also be quite aggressive towards their neighbors, and sometimes only to very specific neighbors. Clownfish are a great example. They're a good community fish if kept alone or in pairs, but often become very aggressive with other clownfish. So one species of clownfish per tank is usually the best bet, but at the same time, clownfish are rarely aggressive towards other species and do very well in a community tank. That pair of clownfish will also share the same small territory in the tank, so whether you have one clownfish or a pair, the number of other fish you can keep in that tank stays roughly the same. On the other hand, some fish, like the 6-line wrasse, will add very little waste to the tank, but need a huge amount of territory to themselves if you want to keep other fish that like the same type of habitat as them. Otherwise, they become huge bullies and can even kill their tank mates. Now, even though selecting a good community of fish for your tank is a little more nuanced and doesn't have a one-size-fits-all answer, we all want to start off with some really cool and awesome-looking, easy-to-keep community fish, and you can click here to check out the top 10 best options for beginners.